Good morning. Happy episode 22, snow day, 77 days left till May 11th, where you will elect a mayor and a council. This is an inspiration week, as I mentioned yesterday. Yesterday, I kind of eased into this little change of channel. I was talking about code of conduct and how to file a complaint, things like that. And that's all interesting. So we've been in the weeds there, and I'll pick that up at some point. But CBC did a story on McAdam and how the mayor there is spearheading with council and other leaders in the community an economic development using their existing railway assets. And I wanted to talk more about that today as a case study. Of course, you can read the article on CBC. But I think it's important, if you're following along with me, to know how communities, and that's why I say this week is kind of an inspiration week, how communities, specifically communities that depended on kind of manufacturing and an extraction industry, say fishing, mining, logging, whatever, that kind of thing, or railways. When there was a decline in those activities, what happens to those communities? Do they just crumble? Do they just fall away? Do they just shrink? And that does happen. So it is something to guard against and actively work against. And of course, that's what a mayor and council need to be spearheading at any given time. And that's why I thought, a community like St. Stephen that has incredible promise and potential can look to communities like McAdam and others I want to bring to your attention this week. I've been doing lots of reading on this, and it really does fire me up. As, like I said, a case study, inspiration for where we can go in the future, but it really does take that voice of leadership to say, hey, here's where we're going. I talked a lot about that yesterday. What happened in McAdam? What happened in McAdam really, the story as you roll it out is two pivotal moments that were led by the mayor and the council there. What we are going to see in this story really is how at the beginning, it takes a few things for mayor and council to set the groundwork, to have a vision. Yesterday I talked about that old trope, without a vision, the people perish. What needs to happen is the mayor and council and key players when you're talking about unifying a community's voice and heading in a direction is understanding where the community is in terms of what assets does the community have. We talk about potential, we talk about promise, and really what that is on the ground is assets, things that the community already owns or has. And we're an incredible community here in the Municipal District of St. Stephen. I could spend time listing out our assets. I think of like the chocolate factory and the incoming basketball court, the oldest court, and the river. Things that are heritage, things that in the past we have accumulated together. And that really does give us potential to move into the future. McAdam's town slogan is "Our heritage is our future." I got to admit, and I got to apologize, I guess, to McAdam a little bit. When I originally heard that, I just kind of thought, I didn't like it. I thought, wow, our past is our future. How does that make sense? It felt very like in limbo, or they cancel each other out. But frankly, I think it's brilliant. Because that is what it takes to move a community, like I said, that has depended on industries that are no longer with us or are in decline or are limited based on decreased demand globally. How do you take a community like that into the future? Well, this is what happened in McAdam. They realized that they do have a railway heritage, a history of railway, but most importantly, all that railway infrastructure. So they did a kind of a scan of their own space and said, what do we got? We got railway. We got that infrastructure here. And we have a heritage, a population, as the mayor said, Mayor Stanix in the article, we've got a population whose grandfathers, whose grandparents lived this railway culture. And McAdam was 3,000 people at its height. Now it's about 1,300. And so they have seen that decline. And St. Stephen has also seen a decline in population. There's a parallel there for sure. But McAdam said, here's what we've got. Now, there was some hardship in 2021. Their wallboard factory closed, which was a lot of jobs, and I can imagine that must have been devastating. And again, I spent some time with Mayor Stanix. He took me around in his truck. We drove out to the wallboard factory a couple years ago, and that was absolutely devastating. I think about the flakeboard factory, Aruco or Ganong going under here. God forbid, that would be absolutely devastating. We need to keep those important industries, those important places of business thriving and serving our community and being served by our community. That's an incredible asset. But what else does St. Stephen have? Well, McAdam figured that out 6 years ago. So this is really the first pivotal moment. Is 6 years ago, Mayor Stanix said, we have this railway infrastructure, and they made a connection to the growth happening at the Port of St. John. The Port of St. John was making a $250 million investment 6 years ago to expand, bring more shipping in through that port to bring goods to North America, throughout Canada and the eastern seaboard of the U.S. And so that $250 million investment set off alarm bells in McAdam, where they said there might be a connection here. Port Railway. That's the first pivotal moment where it took leadership to have a vision to say there could be something here. The second pivotal moment was when they reached out to the executives of the Port Authority. It's run by DP World. They actively got a hold of the executives there and said, how can we help? And I love that, because as a business person myself, I realize business is solving a problem. You're in business when you can solve someone's problem. And so DP World actually said to McAdam, well, and I like the article where they said, it's kind of almost like a toss away, like, well, find out inland ports are something we need. Figure out what those are and see if you can do it. It's not like they were going to hold their hand and shepherd them along. They just said, we could use inland ports. If you can figure out that logistics issue, we might be able to do something together. And so again, the mayor and council, that's when the third moment, I'd say those are two pivotal moments. Discerning what needs to be done, what can be done, then reaching out and saying, how can we help? And then being told there's some promise here, but then the real work begins. And so McAdam realized that they do have the infrastructure and they do have the people to support it, but then they needed to do the hard work. And again, I went around with Mayor Stanix, and he showed me the developments, the zoning that began. We're going to do commercial developments here for distribution centers. Once they figured out the inland port plan and took it back to DP World and the railway company specifically, they needed land. They need that space to put distribution centers and car storage. That's everything that's required of an inland port. And so McAdam has land and says, great. They need the railway infrastructure. Great. They need the people to support it. Great. Now they need literally pipes, roads, water, the kind of stuff I talked about yesterday. Those are, we say, well, those are assets, but they're actually liabilities. When you think about how they deteriorate and need to be kept up and need to be paid for and need to be replaced. Well, that is, on a balance sheet, that is what McAdam had to deal with and say, okay, if we're going to bring more industry, if we're going to bring distribution centers, if we're going to bring commercial zoning to the land that we have and more residents, then we need to upgrade our facilities. And that's where the hard work then began of figuring out how to put that in, how to tap into development, but then, of course, how to fund it and how to pay for it without raising the property taxes, because I talked yesterday about a municipality's only real revenue is property owners. How do you build and upgrade and expand and pay for all that up front, getting ready for growth and development without jacking up taxes on your current residents? to the point that it's just too painful. And that, of course, is the limit on a lot of growing municipalities. So McAdam has figured that out. I'm not going to go into, they are figuring out, like I said, there's risk. I'm not going to go into exactly how. You can read articles and read up on them. Because really the point that I'm making here is this is an example of leadership. And I'm just going to come out and say it. I was really inspired 2 years ago when I met the mayor of McAdam and saw how many years it took to do like those pivotal moments, like I say, to have a vision, to cast that vision, to do the hard work of the phone calling and the meetings with executives and discerning the need and then taking the action. It's just the start of the process. And that is what I want to be doing as your mayor. And as I say, it hasn't happened yet. There's a lot of catch up happening. Sometimes it feels like we're kind of bailing a leaky ship a little bit in St. Stephen. I love here. I love living here. I am proud of it. Best decision I ever made. But I can only imagine what it would be like to have leadership saying, here's what we're going, here's where we're going, here's what we're doing. And municipalities and cities across this country, I see doing that. They're very clear about where they're going and what they're doing. And that is what I want to be doing in St. Stephen. There's that balance of, the mayor and the council working together as a really great functional team for the day in and day out responsibilities of maintaining a great place to live, but then also casting a vision, taking us in direction and doing the work the way McAdam has to prepare and take us into the future. And so I'm really excited by that kind of thing. That's why tomorrow I want to bring another case study to you. Chemainus, BC. They've done something really innovative. And of course, I'm not saying we do the railway thing or we do what Chemainus has done, and I'll talk about that tomorrow. But St. Stephen has that same kind of potential energy, like a slingshot being pulled backwards. We're just ready to go. And if, I just keep thinking that quote yesterday, Yogi Berra, if you're not sure where you're going, you're going to end up somewhere else. I'm not sure we know where we're going right now. We have a municipal plan. We have a lot of promise. We have some branding apparently that's going to be released. But where exactly are we going together? We need a mayor who is going to cast that vision, take us in that direction with each other. And so the mayor cannot be prescriptive about that. But when a council gets in, I'd say within 1 year, we need to have that clear vision of our assets. Where are we going? What problems can we solve? How can we bring business and industry, jobs and residents to St. Stephen so that we can thrive into the future? All right, that's it for today. Hope you have a great Monday snow day. It's not even snowing yet, but apparently it's going to. And I will see you tomorrow, Tuesday, for more buildupststephen.ca. Check out that website for my priorities and my commitments and the action plan by which we will make decisions just like this so you know exactly what is happening every step of the way with me as your mayor. Have a great rest of your day. Take care of yourself and your neighbor, and let's build up St. Stephen. Cheers.